So I'm preempting the president's speech tonight because in his last State of the Union, he took step one of the recovery process and admitted we're addicted to oil. Now here it is a year later, and he's ready to take step two. So at this rate, we ain't never gonna recover. So much for the president's speech. It's going to be more of that same blather. He's got a dozen people working on how to say the least, to offend the least, to change the least. As far as I can figure, everything's going according to plan. The Treasury is getting transferred from all of us to the top 1% who now own over 50% of the wealth of this country. When they talk about spending, it's going to be real close to $600 billion in Iraq in the near future. The money doesn't get spent in Iraq. No, it goes to weapons manufacturers here at home. Carlyle Group, Bechtel, Halliburton, those are the ones getting the money. Your money, tax dollars. One of these days I'll talk about the Federal Reserve and talk about a con game that is, since 1913. In fact, this is a good time to talk about it. So he's talking about the State of the Union. Let me tell you the true State of the Union. 1913, the government gave away its constitutional duty to print money to a bunch of bankers. So now we don't print money ourselves, we borrow it from the Federal Reserve. That means we got to pay interest on this money that we borrow. Most of it in a digital form, so that they're not even out the cost of printing the money. They just say, okay, here's some ones and zeros. That'll be 4 cents, please. I think that's the current charge. For every dollar that the government borrows, they got to pay 3 or 4 cents to a bunch of bankers, which is why we've got income tax. The sole purpose of the income tax is to pay off the bankers for the privilege of borrowing money from them. When Georgie decided to let it slip that he thought that the Constitution was just a piece of paper, he let out a real fact. That paper has been abused for a lot longer than his reign. 1913, they really pulled a quick one over the American public. And we've been paying for it ever since. It wasn't just giving corporations personhood, which was a great indiscretion, very profitable for them. 16th Amendment to the Constitution was in order to be able to tax our incomes, because it's not allowed for in the Constitution. Now, you won't read in any of your history texts, but the 16th Amendment was never actually ratified by 2/3 of the states. Don't matter to these people. They just keep going on. They got the guns to back them up. All we got, a few video cameras and weblogs and maybe some mass demonstrations. Now, I can't afford to get all the way up to Washington, D.C. on the 27th, but I am chipping in to someone's trip to represent me. And you got to figure that for every person that shows up on the mall in Washington, D.C. on the January 27th, there's going to be 10 like me helping them get there. That's the true number that you got to count when you look for the validity of a mass demonstration like that one is hopefully going to be. So enough for one night, and probably said a hell of a lot more than old Resident Bush will tonight. So now, into the circle file.